This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. The questions that we have out there that most of you have been sending to me are the age-old questions that we've been dealing with for the 10 years that I've been a faculty advisor for a chapter. And right now, Patrick Bass, who's on the screen, is our chapter advisor, faculty advisor. Is one, how do we get more students? Two, how do we compete with the other societies? And really, the answer is let's not compete. Let's figure out how to engage them in with us and use what they're doing to be part of what we're doing. I think we also have the virtual chapter that we should be relying on. I know Patrick has done it a couple of times, but I would like to just kind of have us have our conversation. And let's start with how do you feel you might restart, re-energize, re-engage? Because COVID has caused us a lot of issues, of course. We've been fortunate here at the Citadel that we've been face-to-face since August. And so we've seen a decrease in the number of things that we've been able to do. We're just doing them differently. And I'm sure all of you are struggling with some of the same things at your chapters. So I'm going to open it up right quick and see what thoughts people have, what questions they have, what ideas you have. And we'll start first with, how do you restart, re-energize your student chapter if you've seen it drop off this past year? Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, Ron. This is Eric Williamson from University of Texas in Austin. Yeah, I would say drop off is a mild characterization. I mean, it's actually disappeared. I had, as the president, an ROTC cadet, and he left school, and there was no continuation to gather in the next person to take over the president's responsibilities. And reaching out to people in this environment was just didn't meet with any success, because the only way we've been remote since last spring. So the kind of traditional ways didn't seem to really yield any positive results. And this is, I think, a unique aspect of having a SAMI chapter even though we have a large ROTC presence, and we're a civilian school, right? So I've struggled, even though I've been the faculty advisor for this for a number of years now, we still struggle in the initial phases of getting people aware of the actual breadth of what SAMI offers. When they see the name Society of American Military Engineers, a lot of people, unless you can get them into a conversation and explain, the breadth of what that means, they sort of the initial name is a little bit off-putting to people that don't want to have or don't have an interest in anything military related, for better or for worse, what that means. But they don't realize the civilian support available and the breadth of activities and educational initiatives, and they just don't get, you don't have a chance to get them to have that awareness, unless you can actually put them in a room and speak to them, which is very, very challenging. So I don't have any solutions to offer. I'm just going to echo, the concerns that have been raised, which is, our activity has basically dropped to essentially zero, and getting it started back up again. In the fall, we're supposed to go back to in-person classes. It might change in the fall, but this year has basically been a big zero for us. So I don't have any solutions to offer. I guess maybe I shouldn't have spoken, because I always taught that unless you have a solution to offer, you're part of the problem. But I guess I'm just part of the problem right now. But I wanted to give you our unique spin on what that problem looks like.
I see a couple of people with their, go ahead, David.
Hi, this is Dave Lovell from the University of Maryland. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We had, in some sense, a similar situation probably exacerbated a little bit by just bad luck with the previous set of chapter officers. We had a chapter that kind of had some steam behind it and was doing okay. Then we had a group of officers who weren't that engaged, and it was kind of, falling off the radar screen a little bit. And we were, in some sense, just getting poised to sort of punt on that group, the next group of officers, and sort of reinvigorate the whole thing when COVID happened. So we sort of took the 1-2 punch. But what I did in the meantime, and this is by no means a success story. This is not what do you do to fix the problem. This is more what are we doing to hopefully start to fix the problem. But what I did is I just through the courses that I teach and some other students that I was engaged with, I found some people that I knew were interested, that had demonstrated, a certain maturity about their coursework and their approach to school. And I started just testing the waters to see who might be interested in something related to the defense industry as a career. Now, granted, our university is inside the Beltway, so we don't have as many people who wouldn't necessarily know what the breadth of something like SAMI had to offer. So I got a new group of people. We elected some new officers, and I basically gave them the opportunity, and we didn't blame it on the previous officers. We blamed it on COVID because that's a pretty benign thing that everybody hates. So, and we said, look, here's your chance to really show some leadership and to crank this thing back up again. And by the time you're done doing that, it'll be some unbelievable recommendation letters that I'm able to write for you. They like that sort of stuff, so they went for it. The other thing we have working for us, again, being inside the Beltway, is our development office is pretty tied into some local offices of some big companies that everybody's heard of, Raytheon and Leidos and Northrop Grumman, companies like that. And we've had some small offerings for our chapter on the development menu for quite some time. So we have, we get little bits and pieces. We get $5,000 to support the program, this SAMI chapter activities for a year from company X and another $2,000 from company Y or something. So we have a little bit of money. It's hard to spend that money during COVID because all the stuff we would normally spend it on is sort of, in-person stuff, transportation to do facilities tours or to host guest speakers, something like that. But what we have done a little bit is put it back in the lap of those companies, because the companies are interested in the SAMI chapter for a reason. They're trying to identify those same students that we're trying to identify, the ones who would be willing to take a job whose interests align with the interests of the defense intelligence type community, and they want to identify those students too. So we've said, okay, look, we need to have some seminars, we need to have some guest speakers, but it's got to be cool stuff. We don't want, how did you balance, some budget for something, or, how did you pass some process that's going to bore people to death? We want it to be really cool, and they have responded. They've been putting together some ideas about, okay, what are some unclassified versions of various presentations that we could put together that really kind of highlight, well, what is the military engineering industry? What are the kinds of things that people do without getting too far under the hood? And I think so far we have some things on tap that'll be pretty exciting for the students. So that's, we're not very far along, and I'm talking for too long, but that's kind of the plan over here.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, if everybody can mute that's not talking, because we had a little bit of reverb going on, and I think it was actually one of the phone calls that are coming in, but just so that we're all being able to help each other. A couple of things that came out when, David, as you were talking, and I think it applies to all of us. One of the things I struggled with was getting officers every fall. So we started doing a process where every December we did made our decision on the next officers. And so they were rising seniors and rising juniors, and therefore they had 6 months, the spring, to work with the current seniors or juniors who were the leaders at that time. So you didn't have to wait for the fall, because that's one of the biggest things that everybody bumps into is every fall, trying to get the students together. But by having the leadership already built in, you're way ahead. I think the other thing that you said, David, and I would like to just highlight on it, is we have brought in other majors in two ways. The first one is every speaker or group or company that comes in, we make sure they're talking about other than just engineers. We make sure they bring an accountant with them. They bring somebody from HR because they're all supporting this large company. And so therefore we try to sell that to the students in the other majors to come join us. Because again, these are big engineering companies, big Boeing, for example, so it's not an engineering company, it's an aviation company, right? And I think the other one is that we've had a number of business majors join our mini Baja team. Because, when you look at some of the different teams, you have to have that business plan out there as part of it. And so we've been using those as opportunities to get the word out. And then what we're also doing is trying to send out every time we're doing a company, we try to make sure that company, we highlight all the different areas of different disciplines they're going to be talking about for their company and send that out to department heads to share with their students. We found that has worked a little bit because now it's coming from a department head, but we have some department heads that won't send it out. It comes in and they ignore it, right? So I throw those two items out. There was just something, David, that you had said that sparked something that I've seen working at other schools, and that is trying to get your leadership team set up before Christmas so that January they have a chance to be mentored in the spring. And the second is to try to get companies to do more than just engineering when they come in. But I think those are fantastic ideas that you were mentioning. Others, how to get yes, William, Bill.
Yeah, hi everybody. Bill Doe from University of Colorado, Boulder. I'm in the College of Engineering, lifelong SAME member when I was active duty. I agree with the sentiments of the others that we're basically starting from ground zero again. It's just what it is. We were about 3 years in with a pretty successful growing chapter. Candidly, I was relying on the backs of student veterans in engineering. We have a pretty good cohort. They seem to get it, obviously the military connection. And I found that they were my best go-to people to try to get the chapter started and keep it going. And our challenge was then to get them to bring, non-veteran students to the mix. And so I think, but we've been challenged like everybody else. We have a very large college with an active DoD research agenda, but we're not driving the train. We have a full-blown career-ready program in our college. We have, like most large universities, 30 or 40 student clubs in engineering. So we're competing with a lot of different things. I think one thing I can offer, because we have it and I haven't really taken advantage of it, some large universities or others may be knowing about the Hacking for Defense course. We are 4 years into teaching that course. I've been involved in it. We have 50 students solving this semester 6 real-world DoD problems. Some of them are engineer, or some of them are civil and SAME kind of related. We have over 12 active mentors from our community that are involved in helping the student team solve these problems. And I need to tap into our SAME Denver chapter to find some mentors to help support that program. I think what we have found is to try to leverage all the other stuff we got going. We can't reinvent the wheel. SAME is just not going to be big enough at our university to do that. But if we can tag on to other things going on and show the logo, show the flag, then I think we might attract others. So that's kind of my next initiative internally.
So that's great comments. And I think the other one that sometimes we have to think about is my director of student success at my college here said, hey, how about if I bring all the chapter leaders together once a month, we feed them, and we talk about how can we have joint meetings. That has been tremendous. Getting them to talk, share the flyers, and then the presidents are the ones sending out the flyers for all of the different meetings that are going on, because the opportunities are incredible, and a lot of times it's the fact our students just don't know about it, right? The second thing is that we were also looking for opportunities for them to, as they come to one of your meetings, we can really highlight, or if you got this joint meeting, all you need is about 30 seconds to say, hey, by the way, here's the key things that we do. And by the way, our membership is free. Boom. And have laptops there for people to go ahead and sign up. And most kids have a laptop. You pop up, have a handout or whatever for them to quickly log on and become a member. And then you've got that group that you can start to pull in to your activities. But a lot of times it's getting them to do it during a meeting to grow your membership. And we found that very successful, sitting at ASCE meetings, IEEE meetings, you name it, ASME meetings, where we're bringing together and having a company, because that company wants, like you said, Bill, the students from all the different majors. They don't just want one major, they want them all. And so sometimes it's kind of tying into it as a career fair opportunity when you have these club presentations by companies. So I throw that out. It's something that I've heard from another school doing it, something that we're starting to try to do to try to be synergistic, if you will. But I know, Bill, you've got maybe 20 clubs. It becomes hard, but maybe there is a time where one person in the college takes that on as a way to bring those students together, mentor those students, share their plans of how they're going to operate this coming year. So sometimes you can also deconflict that you don't have 12 meetings on the same night. You know, you start to kind of make sure that every week you're spreading them out so our students have an opportunity to go to multiple meetings. So again, something to think about. I throw that out as just an idea that's sparked by what you said. Larry, you had your mic on, and Patrick, you had your mic on. I thought maybe you might want to say something. And John, you're next. You had your mic on.
Okay, well, sorry guys, I was a little bit late. I'm getting used to this app. But anyway, I'm Larry Perez. I represent Saddleback College, which is a community college in Southern California. It's kind of a whole different ball game running an SAME chapter at the community college. One is because when our students leave after their 2 or 3 years at the community college, they're transferring to universities all across the country. So it's made it somewhat difficult for them to get, internships, because the companies like that are local to us, Northrop, we have JPL around, they know that the students will be leaving. So why train these students for 1 year and then when they're going to leave? But they have recently have offered some summer internships. So what we're doing for our particular chapter is having them come back as guest speakers. So we're kind of leveraging this particular time with Zoom, and it's made it really nice for us to get students that are in Arizona or in different parts of the country to come and do presentations. So what we've been doing is running monthly presentations from those students, and it's been relatively successful because it's always nice for students to come back and tell us what the real world is like. And secondly, with the universities, we've had students transfer to different universities across the country and ask them to come and talk to our students, telling them what is it like at Michigan or in Arizona, and tell our students what it's like. The only issue we have is we're very close to UC Irvine, and the SAME chapter there is not really in working very well. So I think one of the things that we would like to see is have SAME chapters from other parts of the country, those students come and talk to our students who are at our community college, because I think that would be engaging for them to see, hey, what is it like in the university? So that would be a recommendation for the universities to go out and reach out to maybe your local community colleges and just have a presentation, with the SAME logo saying, this is what we do, this is our chapter. Because I think students would like to hear from, what's it like at a 4-year university after you transfer. The other thing is that we have an advantage is that we have Camp Pendleton in close proximity to our school. And so what's coming out now is cybersecurity. So that is one thing that we're working on to build our cybersecurity program at our college. We're going to get a new building in the next 3 years specifically for that. And we have a new faculty member from recently retired from the Marines that was involved in cybersecurity. So we're hoping to go that angle. So we do have that for our advantage. And our SAME chapter is really turning into a computer science type membership. And I think I heard several of you say, yeah, we're kind of stuck. Our school is kind of precluding us from having any kind of meetings, personal meetings with our students until possibly next fall. So we've kind of been stagnant this year, although we have been having our monthly guest speaker events. So, and that's where we're at.
So Larry, just to make sure, are you guys teaching face-to-face or are you totally remote?
No, we're totally remote right now. Only face-to-face is like our EMT and nursing programs. And in the fall, this is going to be a problem, I think, maybe across the country, because they've asked volunteers for full-time faculty to come teach in person, which I am doing, but many of the full-time faculty don't want to do it in the fall because we got to get the schedule out. So it's going to be a problem getting back face-to-face, and that's what kind of limits our activities.
Two things I'd like to throw at you, just the ideas that based upon what you mentioned. The first one is I would reach out to your local SAME post and see how they can combine the two of your chapters in activities at their post meetings that they sponsor, say 4 students from you and 4 students from them to come to the post meetings. And then you get that cross fertilization. The second thing is I would also look at your post to consider one of their scholarships or 2 of their scholarships to be a student who is transferring to Irvine, that they get the first year scholarship because they're going to Irvine from you, but the second year scholarship is if they are joining the SAME chapter there to help it continue to grow. Those are ideas of how your local post can become very active in growing each of the chapters. Our local post has 6 students every time they have a meeting. Of course, we've been virtual. But in the past, for the last 8 years, they've sponsored, and it's the companies that sponsor the students coming there. We actually got them to agree to add one of our officers as a student liaison to their board meetings. And so that was a huge step. And of course, COVID hit, as Bill said, it stops everything. But it was a step in the right direction, and they're just waiting to get that started back up. So a couple of ideas for you to assist maybe as you're thinking about how to grow it past you. And I think what you're doing, bringing them back, is great. What a great opportunity, because of course they should be local, right?
Right.
For coming home, right? So that's a great opportunity. Okay, John, I noticed you had your mic on earlier. You have anything you would like to state? John Waluski?
Yeah, hi there. I'm John Waluski. I'm faculty in Civil Engineering Department at Texas A&M. So we've traditionally had one of the larger student chapters in the country, and a lot of that has to do with the Corps of Cadets was sort of the origin of where SAME was located in the university structure, not necessarily in civil or in the College of Engineering, although a lot of our membership were students in the college, but we've also have a lot of students from business school and architecture and construction science. So we're kind of pretty diverse as far as our makeup, but I would repeat kind of what everybody else has said with regards to the COVID issues and kind of how that threw a monkey wrench into our traditional transition from one leadership group to another. And so we're back in that, like was mentioned before, we're in that repair mode of trying to get back to startup, and now we're running up against the the end of the spring semester. It's wrapping up here, so we get great support. We have 2 posts that support us: Houston, Galveston, and San Antonio. So I mean, without a doubt, we're extremely lucky with regards to our posts, and they have liaisons that we interact with a lot. So yeah, for us, it's just kind of stumbling through, trying to get something up and going, new officers in place. We're sort of restructuring our officers. Normally they would serve until the end of the spring semester, but we're going to revisit that essentially to get out of the box with new officers elected in the spring, and then moving forward with trying to get our chapter up and running like we've been in the past.
John.
Hey, Ron, I think you might be, yeah, sorry.
I've noticed it myself. Hey, one of the things I'd like to throw out to you is one of the things that we did to try to make sure SAME had quite a variety of majors as the officers is I was able to move the university here to have all the engineering chapters pick their officers in December. And what I did is I waited till January and I looked at all the officers who had applied to be officers, and weren't elected. And then I reached out to all of them, and sure enough, they all would like to be an officer in SAME. And they were incredible young people, young men and women that we used, and I've been doing that as often as I can, because you always seem to have more, say, an ASCE or ASME or IEEE or whatever your biggest ones are. And I just always would go to those and see what was going on and watch who was there and how well they presented themselves, but maybe they weren't selected or elected. That's another way to bring in the variety in your officer pool, is to actually reach out and see how the others are doing it. And Jeff, before I get to you, Patrick Bass had his unmuted first, so I'm going to ask him to jump in, and then back to you, Jeff.
Yes, sir. This is Patrick Bass over at the Citadel. And so one of the other things that we're trying to do to kind of key off of, getting events and having good attendance is we've been looking at events that are more relevant to what the students are kind of facing in the current environment. And so one thing that we did was hold a Zoom interviewing techniques session. And so we did that in conjunction with the Career Center here. And they've got to be remote more or less for these events anyway. So we had the Zoom interviewing techniques session held through Zoom. And so we thought that was a good idea because that's going to help the students as they prepare for, the job search and what that might look like in the near time frame as they start looking for employment. And so that was one way that we were able to kind of maintain activities. And then also in those events, we reached out to the other student chapters for like ASME, IEEE. And so we were able to kind of capture students from the different student clubs and have good attendance for us and also advertise SAME. And so it's ended up being successful for us as well.
Yeah, I would think that all of us need to think about some of those unique opportunities that can make you look different. Like I would look out and see if you had an accountant that wanted to talk about working for engineering companies and what the difference is, or supply chain management, something like that actually our engineers need to know about, right? But they tend to never get taught that as much as we would like them, or business plans. That might be a way to bring in other majors outside of engineering as we go forward. Great idea, Patrick. Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. So Jeff Prevost, I'm the right at the tail end or the beginning of COVID, newly appointed faculty advisor for our chapter here at the University of Texas at San Antonio. So
congratulations.
Really nice to hear that some of you are also experiencing some transitional difficulties related to COVID. Mine, I think, are a little compounded though. So I'm really eager to gain from the collective wisdom of this group here. I was asked by at the time, the president of our local chapter to take over the advising because the current advisor was leaving the university. So this happened literally the semester before COVID hit us. And since that time, there has been little to no activity because of what COVID has done to the ability to engage the student groups and the student activities. I have been reaching out to the local leadership of our organizational chapter here. They seem to be engaged, but they're not engaging. They're not reaching out to the local community and doing anything. So we're in San Antonio. I mean, we've got military from tip to stern. I mean, we have military all over the place. The fact that you guys have now educated me just on this call that the Society of Military Engineers is something that exists at a broader scale than simply the universities that we represent here. That's really encouraging. We just stood up a new National Security Collaboration Center. The head of that is General Guy Welch. And so I've got now some ideas on what we need to do to engage with their activities and our activities in the College of Engineering. But I did have some questions. One is, so the society's name is a society, or it's the Association of Military Engineers, right? SAME. It's E is the engineering side. So, but I hear you talking about membership beyond just the College of Engineering. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. As my time has been with SAME, I've been with them almost 35 years now. one of the things that I've discovered along the way, every time I went to a different chapter, individuals were part of it because their company was focused in engineering, but they weren't necessarily engineers. Accountants, lawyers. We had Boeing. When Boeing came a couple of years ago, they did an incredible job of bringing in supply chain management, lawyer, accountant, and those people became mentors in our program here because they liked what they saw, and so they joined our mentorship program for our engineers. But I think the real important thing is that, and I've heard, I said it once, and of course, it quickly became something that our executive director said, okay, I like that. Two things. First, Society of American Military Engineers, you do not have to be American, military, or an engineer to be part of it. Because what you need to have is a focus on improving and strengthening and improving the resilience of our infrastructure, right? Period. And number two, what we're all about is trying to help students see how they and different disciplines can become part of it. And what we see is SAME, and this is something that Joe Citadel has taken off and run with. I made a comment 10 years ago that I used SAME, the student chapter, and of course, just to let y'all know, I'm the Dean of Engineering here at the Citadel. I used it as an integrator. I wanted to bring all of my students together, and so every time we had an event, it had to have representation for all of my majors, as many as I possibly could, because I wanted it to be an integration to show them that you can't survive as a civil or a mechanical or electrical or you name it, chemical engineer, without the other disciplines. And so those are two things I think that if we always stay focused on, we can bring more people in and start to have that growth. And one of the ways to do it, I think, Jeff, you've got it right there in your back pocket, is finding engineers who had majors other than engineering, who have careers in engineering, because that's one of the few things the military does so often is we'll stick a history major, a biology major, you know, a English major in our engineering focused areas, and they grow up to be commanders, right? And so having one of those talk and then you sell that to the other major to come join you for them to see the advantage. I'll use two examples. We had two, because we're a military school, two regimental commanders in a row, both English majors, and today both of them are CEOs of engineering STEM companies, right? And so it was just the fact that they found their way through that process. And I think that's what's important. So I throw that at you, and I think, wow, what a great location to be in, to pull in those military people who have other than engineering backgrounds to really try to help you sell what you're doing.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want to forget to say it again. I want to make sure everybody understands that we have a virtual student chapter. All right. And so I would encourage you all, Eddie, to send out the next meeting for the COI meeting. Just jump in there to see, and if we can also make sure that we send out the information on the virtual, Eddie, to this group as well, the next meeting and what it is. Those are great opportunities as well for you just to use that as your next meeting if you don't have something already scheduled. There's some very good discussions that are ongoing there. And that process was started because we have students all at schools that don't have a chapter, right?
So when you say that, you mean that there's a presentation format that you've already created for hosting a meeting?
There is a virtual student chapter that has a faculty advisor, and that they are creating students that are not at a school that has an SAME chapter that are joining this student chapter. Also, your students can join that student chapter just as well as and be part of two of them. You can be, and you can also, by the way, students can be members of multiple posts, right, Eddie?
Yes, and well, I'll let you finish, Ron, but I do have a little bit more clarification on the student chapter, the virtual student chapter.
Rock on.
Well, I wanted to highlight two things from the national office that will hopefully help with some of what's being discussed. One, the virtual student chapter right now is being organized as a professional development vehicle for all of our students. So we've been recruiting speakers. We did a 3-month series with Hewitt, one on interviewing skills, one on crisis decision making, and one on I blanked on the third one. I'm just about to email all the student members today about next week. We're doing one from an executive who works at Orlando Resort, the theme park in Orlando. He's their an engineer responsible for all their ride management. So we're trying to get more professional development coming out of the national office using the virtual student chapter, and all our students get advertised that, but we're not getting a lot of students participating. I think I flow all that through you all as well. So if you're not getting that, I'll see what our database settings are to make sure you're getting those. If you haven't joined the College Outreach COI, a lot of our communications go through that as well. So please, through your membership account, join the College Outreach COI. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, in hearing what you're saying, I think a lot of what we've needed to focus on at the national office is providing more programming and more options for you to bring to the table to your students. One of the things we're working on right now is trying to invite more students to participate in our national conferences. So with JETSI coming up, all the students are going to get a newsletter in the next 2 weeks highlighting that we are going to hold a student specific orientation to the virtual platform to show students how our virtual conferences are organized. And then we're going to have a panel of young professionals in that orientation talking about tips and tricks of how to take advantage of the conference. And then on the Monday of JETC, before the program begins, we're going to have a reception, a virtual reception hosted by the College Outreach COI specifically for any students that are registering. Registration is free, and we really haven't capitalized on the fact that students can attend our conferences. Ideally, a year from now at JETC, I forget where 22 is scheduled, but if it's in person, that'll morph into, we want to host physical groups of students there. We want to have mentors for them assigned during the week, sessions that they're highlighted to go to. So, we're trying to create more value that then makes it easier for you to sell us as an organization. And those are just two examples. And then Patrick Bass is leading our competitions group within College Outreach. We also want to promote competition, a spirit of competition for this kind of problem solving across all our chapters. So those of you that are doing competitions at the chapter level, talk to us about expanding that nationwide and issuing those challenges out to all of our chapters to get involved if they're open.
And by the way, the competition is a design competition, so therefore all of your capstone projects can be ones that are submitted, right? Listen, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. What we're trying to do is increase the opportunity for students to have to sell their design, sell their project, whatever it is. One of the things we're doing here, and Patrick, I'll let you jump in and add, but we have a business bulldog competition, right? It's a business plan. Well, we're winning it almost every year now because we're using our capstone teams in mechanical, electrical, because they are a device of some type, and they are submitting. And right now we have 5 finalists and 4 of them are engineering teams. And of course the business school is going, but you know what? We're now teaching our kids business plans, and we're teaching them supply chain management as part of our capstone, which is helping us to do that. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is improve the experience of our students and use something they're already doing. All you need is one team to participate, and the others can observe what's going on or learn from it, if you will. And that could be something that SAME does based upon you reaching out to departments and talking to them. Jeff, the different departments at San Antonio, and see, okay, electrical has these great projects they're already doing. Well, let's build a business plan. And if they're not, think about if there's one team that would like to do it, and try to get some like mentor from the business school to help them with that. And also, what we need is ideas from you all. Feed those to Eddie, myself, Ann McMillan's on here. She is the chair of the College Outreach Committee. Feed those to us, because what we can then do is Eddie can use that to help figure out what's the next thing in the virtual chapter, right? Something that could help our students, something they might need. There's a person that has NA. I want to make sure you've had a chance to speak. Patrick, go ahead and talk about the competition real quick.
Yes, sir. I'm just going to key off what you said really quickly. Yeah, the competition is there to showcase the work that the students are already doing. So it's low threat to their work threshold. It's basically an abstract in a PowerPoint presentation. We go from there to see how effectively they've described their project. But it provides a way for us to show what our students are doing at the national level, and gives them a way to interface with potential employers as well for the work that they're doing.
Ron, there was a question in the chat box about undergraduates and graduate students. SME does not consider graduate students student members. They would have to join as professional members. We are getting word from the membership department that they are also putting a cap of an age limit of 25 for any student member. So as member, we're still trying to figure out how to really apply that rule. But I know they just did a big purge of all student members that had already surpassed their graduation rate. So it's still something we're trying to get a handle on the membership side.
Eddie, that might be something we're going to have to discuss, because when I look at my evening program, the number of full-time students that are 30, 31, 32, because that COVID, some of them have joined back and gone back to school. And I say this tongue in cheek because I was an ASCE member, or still am, and I restarted my AAC membership 3 times when I went to grad school, each time as a student. Because why? So much cheaper. My wife said, you will be a student first. So I think we might want to look at that. If they are a full-time student, all they need to do is show proof to get the student membership free. It's just something to think about. But anyway, I throw that out, just something that's we're seeing. Go ahead, Larry. By the way, Christina, if you want to talk, great. If you do not, that's fine. Great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
I just want to mention that issue about the age limit, because what we're seeing now at the community colleges, we have, machinists, mechanics coming back to school to get their degree. Of course, they're older, and that's one advantage of our chapter, because we can have these people returning from industry who are mechanics and coming and talk to our students, but you're usually over the age of 25. But that experience, those kind of students seem to be showing up at our community college. That may be true across the country, so it might be advantageous for the 4-year schools to try to tap into those people who are coming back from industry, who don't have degrees, who want to further their education, because that's where our biggest growth is, in career technical education, and I would say in computer science. And one of the things we've done, we do reach out to our student, our Orange County Post, and we do have one of the engineers coming back taking computer science courses, especially in Java, to kind of update their skills in that. So that's one thing that we are offering we can offer to our local engineers, to say, hey, you want to get caught up in Java or C++ or any of the programs and see what's going on with embedded hardware. Because I think one of the greatest things we've been able to do is go see the senior projects at UCI, which do focus on, Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, which we are starting to integrate into our curriculum as part of our courses, because we're seeing that being used. So that may be one thing to look for at the community colleges.
Yeah, I'll say that we were not part of the discussion, so I'll need to regroup with Ann and some of the leaders from the College Outreach to formally request a conversation with the membership COI to address this, because it is feedback we've provided to them that 25, given how we're trying to strategize, seems arbitrary. So I'll bring that back to College Outreach, and we'll address that separately, since it involves a different operational COI. But I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you doing that, because I think also this might be a way for us to be more engaged with our faculty advisors, that once a year they get a list and they have to validate the student as a full-time member, a full-time student. As long as they're a full-time student, or maybe we come up that they're 2/3 of time student, because when I look at an evening program and a person that's kind of working full-time but going back to school as much as they can, some of them are only taking 3 classes versus 4 to be a full-time student. So maybe it's 3/4, right? And I know for me, my evening program averages about 33 as age, right? So versus my day program, which the average age is 19, right? And so I think that Jeff has a great point. I think it could affect this, but Ann has a great point that there is a young member which has a reduced member rate. Maybe there's something in between we can look at. to make sure that we're not losing these valuable individuals that could be joining our organization long term. Anybody else? Eddie, what else was on there as questions? I think we've hit all the questions and the topics that we were going to talk about in a roundabout way, but I wanted to make sure that we have had that opportunity. The one thing we haven't talked about is when to hold chapter meetings. I'll tell you, the only way to figure that out is to find out when your leadership wants to do it, right? We've tried lunch, we've tried early, we've tried late. There's no perfect time. But I think one of the things that we have to be thinking about as we move forward is that COVID has, the chaos it brought has opened up that we're going to be having Zoom available for a long time. And so we might be able to have a meeting where we get most of our students there. It may take a little effort to find what that sweet spot is, but then having availability to live stream it with Zoom, an iPad that's leaned up against the book or something, right? It's not hard to do, and have those students who just can't get there because they just finished work or they're in a class across campus, but they can step into a quiet place to join. That might be a way for us to continue having a vibrant group of students that are participating. Any other comments of anything else that we haven't covered? I've sent you all what I have collected over the years as best practices. If you have another one that we need to add, please send that and I will add it. The idea is to have this document, it's a living document that we can keep sharing of things that have worked at other places that we can consider as it applies to our environment that we find ourselves in. Other questions, other thoughts, other comments? I know that Marilyn's on here. She is going to be looking at student chapter operations, looking at the manual. So if y'all could take a look at the current faculty, the chapter manual, it's a short read, and the faculty advisor manual, it's a short read. They dovetail well. That would be great feedback for us. And I know Marilyn would welcome that. So you can just send all that stuff through Eddie and he can parcel it out to make sure it goes where it needs to go. Marilyn,
I want to take a couple of seconds to just highlight the results of the survey that the virtual student chapter did for our students. I think some of the data might be interesting. It's only about 3 different slides of note. We sent out a survey through the virtual student chapter to all our student members. We've got about 3,000 student members. We only had about 51 respond, but that was still a good number given how many we get at our webinars. Decent mix between demographics, representing various different demographics of what a student is. But a couple of things to highlight for communication. We're still challenged with trying to figure out what's the best way to engage them. We were working on Discord, moving from Slack as the previous thing we had experimented with, but it seems like overwhelmingly email is still the best way to get things out to students. So having them in our database with the correct information is really important. A lot of chapters are recruiting students, but aren't signing them up as formal members in our database. So they don't necessarily get some of our outreach communications. Webinar topics, this is something that if you have local versions of these are the topics that came up as the top of interest. Obviously, anything career related, career paths, or opportunities to get experience through internships, and then also financial support, skills that they would need. That transition, a lot of folks were referencing the move from graduation to the real world, or from 2-year to a 4-year. So there's a lot of space within those transitions to highlight. And then anything that actually makes them more competitive in the job market, I think, are always going to be of interest. Another question was, how can we help once you graduate? So there's follow-throughs. We're now working with the young professionals to be more purposeful about once they leave College Outreach, they should be taken over by young professionals as the COI that's starting to market to them once they enter the professional world. But we're not really making that connection. Even with our scholarship recipients that graduate, there's really not a lot of next steps that we track at the national office. So certainly being able to follow them through their careers would be important. And then mentoring, I think, is also, we are going to be developing a mentoring toolkit for posts to develop their own mentoring programs, those that don't have one. And it could be young professional mentoring, but students would be a target mentoring audience as well. Scholarships, I think that's one of the biggest assets we have as an organization, is the amount of money we provide in scholarships. But we are going to be providing more guidance. We have a scholarship advisory group we've started to help posts that don't know of all the things that they're able to do with a scholarship program, hopefully get them some more ideas, and then pushing the registration at our events. If you all are participating in JETSI in May, we'd love for you to bring students with you and really find ways to engage them in the sessions, highlight sessions they should be attending, make them comfortable asking questions, and then the expo hall as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. If anybody has any questions, let me know.
Hey, Eddie, send that out to everybody. I think that that's great information for all the advisors to know and see, that helps along the way. One of the things that we did with our local post, and I'm going to pass this on to you, is that we sat down about 9 years ago and developed a budget for our chapter that the post was going to provide. That's part of those best practices. And they set up a certain amount of money that they would provide once a month for support of a chapter meeting, meaning food, right? Food brings people, right? But we always don't spend most of it because we always try to get the speaker for these companies to provide the food because that's good business. The second thing is they were providing a student and the faculty advisor to go to JETSI to travel. And if we had the faculty member to get it a different way, they would provide support for 2 students to go to JETSI. They also, like I said to you, provided 6 students to come to their chapter meetings and provided sponsorship for that. But I think the other one that we really started getting after was they were providing a lot of scholarships, but the scholarships were for high school kids going off into engineering. And we said, what about our students? If you're supporting our chapter. So they have split, half of the scholarships go to students that are in college at our college because they're our supporting post. The other half go to students that are going off to college, with a preference to those that are coming to our college, And so that was a way for us to start to say, you have a mission as supporting us, we need a budget. Like we said, the last thing we just did was trying to get a student member to be on the board as a liaison to the board. All those things to help make a more dedicated connection. They also push heavily in my mentorship program from juniors and seniors. We don't do a lot with freshmen because a lot of times the freshmen, you don't know, one, they're going to stay in engineering, and second, they're all over the place, right? But we try to start it with our juniors and seniors, and many of our SAME members, chapter members, post members have signed up to be a mentor through our process. So just a couple ideas that came out when Eddie was talking. Any other questions, thoughts, final thoughts? I'm recognizing that we're coming up on 4, I should say 5, and I want to make sure that we end it on time because I know your time is very, very valuable.
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to mention. We've had some great talks from some of our past students, and they were recorded on Zoom. So is there any way that SAME can set up or do they have a portal where we can post some of our presentations, or some of you guys post some of your great presentations on Zoom that we can share with our students?
Yes, if you have recordings, we have a playlist on our YouTube channel for the virtual student chapter. I can either create one specifically for your chapter or one that is student chapter webinars. But any of that stuff, just send me the files. I'll upload them to YouTube, create links for them, and then the College Outreach COI page has an archive of all past webinars So we can upload all of those and make them available. The students get links to that in their newsletter so that they, it highlights what past webinars we've done. So short answer, yes, get me those files and I'll find a way to get it up on the website. I am going to be emailing the recording for this call and the notes to everybody, including those survey results as well. So you'll see where it's housed.
The last comment I'll make to all of you, and I'm speaking tongue in cheek because when I started the chapter here, restarted, I should say, it was dead for about 10 years. I was in a unique position because I was the dean, and I saw a chance to bring all of my engineers together. One of the things that I would encourage all of you is to have that conversation with your dean or associate dean to say, how do we bring all of our engineering students together in a unified way? And it might be the SAME student chapter that does that, because we are not focused on any one engineering. As Larry said, they're moving more to computer science because that's what they have more of. We tend to have a lot of mechanicals and electricals in it because Patrick Bass is a mechanical, but we have a lot of civils too. I just think that if we can get our leadership in our colleges focused on our student chapters in some way, they might see that SAME with free membership, free fees to go to a conference, and with Eddie and the work they're doing to create a track for students. The only thing they have to do is get there. And if your student post or your chapter post will support a couple of students going, what a way for them to come back and make a presentation in the fall about what they learned in May at the JETSI, right? So I would encourage you to have that conversation, because I don't think a lot of times we have that conversation. A lot of times we saddle this on the junior faculty member who just arrived and say, hey, go forth and do great things. Well, that's not necessarily the best way. And I'm happy to see a lot more gray-haired individuals like me that are involved, because I think we bring so much more to the table on how we can make a difference and spread it across all of our different majors, if you will. So any last comments, thoughts, questions, things for Eddie and I and Ann and Marilyn to think about before we sign off?
I appreciate everybody's contributions. This was very illuminating.
Jeff, we will. I plan to have something early fall, like August, so that as we're all trying to get back into it, right? But for sure, let's keep an eye on what may be available at JETSI. That might be a track or something that you might join to see what the conversation is, all right? But I think you're right. Maybe we'll do something in August before we jump into the academic year to recharge our batteries and recharge some of the thoughts we have, because I think we all learn so much from each other. I already picked up 4 or 5 things I wrote down that I'm going to have Patrick and I work on here at the Citadel.
Great.
Okay, all of you, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening for me, and I hope the same for you. We'll get out the recording, we'll get out that presentation, and you all have received the best practices. If you have an idea to add, we will, and we'll just keep trying to add to it. And do not forget about what Eddie talked about, the YouTube channel that has our recordings, as well as the virtual student chapter, things that they're trying to do there. I was part of 2 of the Kiewit, or observed 2 of the Kiewit presentations, and they were very, very good. And so I think that we can use all of these things to help us as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great, great night.